lot of people find if they don't maintain their exercise, their minds become overactive.
Interesting.
And the overthinking becomes more. And that's why a lot of people say exercise helps them manage their anxiety, helps them manage their stress. Whenever a worry pops up throughout the day, immediately write it down. Review all of your worries and determine, what patterns am I seeing here? Because often what we find, any kind of self-doubt, overthinking, worrying, it will be associated with certain stimuli. Can I positively influence someone who is negative? Well,
how do we become more confident?
When we look at the word confidence, if we look at its origins, it comes from the Latin con and fidere, which literally means with trust. So what does that tell us? That tells us that in order to do the thing, we have to trust ourselves. A lot of women will tend to wait to feel 100% ready before they try something. They want to have the certainty that it'll work out. And the reason is, us women tend to judge failure and rejection as much more heavier than men would. This idea of the swiping, people would say, oh, it's a dopamine hit every time you swipe. But actually, the swipe itself is the dopamine hit because it's anticipating that you're going to get to the goal, which is that one video which will make you go, I'm good now, I can close it. But it never comes. There are 4 drivers of how we see ourselves. So the very first one relates to
Dr. Shadé Zahrai, welcome to the show. How you doing?
I am amazing. I'm so excited to be here.
It's so great to have you. Teach us all the things, all the ways to become more confident, to embody less self-doubt, which I know is something that is pervasive today, unfortunately. I'm excited for what we're all collectively about to learn.
Me too. I can't wait.
Yeah. So congrats on the book.
Thank you.
Big trust. How do we become more confident?
Okay.
Or at least appear as though we're more confident?
Yes, good point, because there are 2 levels. So there's one level around how we feel, and then there's one level around how we're perceived, and sometimes they're not really congruent. You might have someone who deeply inside is confident, but they have these behaviors that are undermining them. And then that lowers perceived competence, how competent other people think you are. And then on the flip side, you have people that don't necessarily feel fully confident, but they have learned how to exude confident behaviors, which has a positive impact on how they're perceived. And then that can help them get to where they want to go. So we want to talk about the 2 areas, right? How do we feel more confident? And then how do we look more confident? But the first thing we need to do is deconstruct the term confidence.
Right. What does it mean?
Yeah. What do you think it means, Max?
Appearing as though you are competent, right?
I love it.
Yeah. I mean, I love that word, that the competence side of things. I mean, that's ultimately how I want to appear. Whether or not I'm having an on or off day, I want my, the work that I've put in to come through in my verbiage, in my nonverbal cues that I'm giving off, all that stuff. How's that sound?
Beautiful,
Yeah.
beautiful. So there's some interesting nuance to the term confidence, though, because when we ask people, what does confidence feel like? They'll often refer to that feeling of readiness, that feeling of certainty, I know I can do this. And what's fascinating is that we're often waiting for that feeling before we do something. Before we take action, before we say yes, before we put our hand up for that opportunity. We wait for that feeling, and then we wonder why we never get there, and we're still waiting and preparing and planning, but never actually taking the step. And it's because that feeling that we've associated with confidence doesn't actually come before we take action. When we look at decades worth of research, what my own research has found is that that feeling comes after you take the action.
Interesting.
Because you have to do the thing, whatever that thing is, the speaking up, the taking the risk, the approaching the new person at the bar, the taking on the health goal, getting to the gym. You have to do it at least once so that your brain gets this proof point, this evidence that, okay, I can do the thing. I did the thing, which then boosts what's called self-efficacy, which is your belief that you can do the thing. And then that leads you to that feeling of confidence. So if that feeling that we've associated with confidence comes after, what needs to come before? And so again, when we look at the word confidence, if we look at its origins, it comes from the Latin con and fidere. I'm hoping that I said that with the right accent.
It
Con and
sounded legit.
fidere, which literally means with trust.
Whoa.
So what does that tell us? That tells us that before we do anything, in order to do the thing, we have to trust ourselves. That is the key. That is the missing link. You don't have to know all the answers. You don't have to feel confident yet, because that's the wrong goal. You just need to trust that you'll be able to handle whatever comes your way, and trust that even if it doesn't work out, you'll be okay. You will learn from it. You'll grow. You'll be able to take better steps next time and improve. So once we recognize it like that, it takes the pressure off because we don't need to wait for that feeling to come. We just trust ourselves first. We call that trust big trust. It's that deep inner unshakable conviction that, hey, I've got this, even in the uncertainty. Now, if we look at my own research, so I finished up a doctorate very recently. I did a full deep dive over the last 5 years.
Congrats, by the way.
Thank you. Really hard. It's very difficult.
Sure.
Got there in the end. Did a full deep dive. Looked at over 50 years of research, conducted my own studies with over 4,000 people. And what we found, and actually this was really similar to a lot of my experiences when I've been coaching thousands of people, when I've been training. We have 7 million students on LinkedIn Learning, so we're constantly paying attention to what they're telling us, what the experiences are. A lot of what we do is also work with leaders in Fortune 500s. So we have a pretty good, sample size of people that allows us to determine certain patterns. And here is what I have found consistently is happening. You will find people who are able to succeed, achieve their goals, achieve their wellness goals, their career goals, their performance goals. And then you have others who want to, but they don't. There's something that holds them back. Now, you might say it's just the fact that this group has skills or has the confidence, but when we look at it, both groups actually have self-doubt. Both groups are experiencing that negative voice of, yeah, maybe you can't do this. Oh, maybe you're not so worthy. Oh, you're not going to be able to keep it up. There's this inner criticism that is occurring. Yet, the group that succeeds acknowledges that they have that voice. They do not internalize that voice, and they take action anyway. Why? Because they trust themselves. That was the biggest mind-blown moment for me when I realized the goal is not to eliminate self-doubt. We don't need to try and eliminate that critical voice that we have because that's just a function of the human brain. The brain is wired to, we often say it's wired to protect us, but there's a bit more to it. The primary function of the brain is to make sure that the rest of the body does what it needs to do using the least amount of metabolic energy. And part of that is protecting us, because if we're safe, it's less effort for the brain, right? When we recognize that the brain is just wired to keep us in our comfort zone because it's less effort for it, because if you try the thing, do the thing, and it doesn't work out, that's a lot more work for the brain to get you through that. So its primary function is to magnify all the things that could go wrong so that you don't take the action because then it has succeeded.
And that is the adaptive purpose of worry, is it not?
Totally. To anticipate everything that could go wrong, to protect yourself.
That's also why we shouldn't listen to our brain when it's stuck in worry mode. Exactly.
And in fact, you shouldn't believe everything you think. Thoughts are not facts. Just like how emotions are not facts. We can reinterpret an emotion. Now, if you're someone who worries, I'm someone who worries, and if anyone listening is someone who worries, I have something for you, which is phenomenally simple and remarkably powerful. Grab a piece of paper and then write at the top, worry list. Okay. Now, you're going to keep that paper with you. Maybe it's going to be in your phone. Okay, in that case, it's not a piece of paper, but keep a notebook or whatever it is. Keep it on you. Whenever a worry pops up throughout the day, whatever it is, immediately write it down. Some people will say, don't think about it, distract yourself from it, but we also know that what you resist persists. Sometimes when you try to ignore something entirely, it just comes back louder or infiltrates you at the worst possible time. So write it down. You're basically honoring the worry. You're telling your brain, hey, I see you. I'm going to capture you. But then the next step is you say to yourself, okay, I'm not going to worry about you right now. And you set what's called I call it a worry o'clock. Set worry time at the end of each day. Maybe 10 minutes, maybe 15 minutes, not too close to sleeping because it might affect your sleep. But at maybe, 5, 6, 7 o'clock before dinner, or whatever works for you, that becomes your scheduled designated worry time. So at that point every day, you pull out that list and you allow yourself to worry. Set your alarm so you know when the alarm goes off, you stop. But it allows you to honor that feeling of concern, feel all the feels. When the alarm goes off, you say, okay, I'm done with the worry. The next step is then to say, is there anything from this list that I can control? And if there is, you then commit to do something about it. But generally, we're worrying about things that we have no control over. And it's called stimulus control for worry. And when we do that, so you capture the worry during the day, you say, okay, you're not worrying about you right now, I'll come back to you later. And then you give yourself that space to worry. It shrinks the worries to size. It also means you're not having to address it in the moment when you have that big emotional reaction that comes with the worry.
Wow. I mean, you're also creating a container for it.
Completely. And that's what, stimulus control. You're giving it some degree of, as you said, a container so that you can better control it and then manage it and then do something with it. Because you're asking yourself, what can I do with this?
Wow.
Is there anything I can do? And then at the end of the week, review all of your worries and determine, what patterns am I seeing here? Are they showing up when I'm with certain people? Because often what we find, any kind of self-doubt, overthinking, worrying, it will be associated with certain stimuli, meaning it's when you're left alone for too long. It's when you haven't really slept very well. It's when you're around people who lead you to doubt yourself. So there'll often be almost a trigger point, which is leading to that, to becoming magnified. And that kind of data gathering allows you to just have a better handle on it and determine, okay, do I need to change some things in my life? Maybe not spend so much time with this person, or acknowledge that, okay, I need to be getting more sleep, or making sure I'm maintaining my exercise. A lot of people find if they don't maintain their exercise, their minds become overactive.
Interesting.
Yes, we've seen this fascinating correlation where if you're not working your body, getting that beautiful hormonal cocktail that comes from the exercise, the mind can start to take on a life of its own.
Wow.
And the overthinking becomes more. And that's why a lot of people say exercise helps them manage their anxiety, helps them manage their stress because of this link. Wow.
Is it rare then to encounter a high performer who doesn't then have an exercise routine?
It's generally rare to encounter a high performer who doesn't have some method of managing their state. And so for a lot of them, they will have an exercise routine and they will have a very regimented structure of, okay, I'm going to wake up at 5 a.m., get my workout done, get to my day, or I'm always going to make time for it at the end of the day. And if you don't come across someone like that, it will be someone who does a different form, a more passive form of exercise, like a yoga.
Yeah.
Or a meditation, which I guess is not really exercise for the body, but it's a grounding technique. So they'll generally have something that they do that they don't even acknowledge is helping them with the overthinking.
Right.
But we know when we look at all the data and the patterns, there's this amazing link.
It's incredible.
It is.
Why do some people seem to inspire feelings of self-doubt and others inspire the inverse, confidence? And do we need to cut those people out of our lives if they regularly, consistently seem to inspire within us feelings of self-doubt?
I remember I had this experience when I worked in corporate. So by way of background, I spent 4 years, so I'm a trained lawyer, commercial lawyer. Really was not for me. Whole other story. I did 4 years there, and then I went into banking and finance. Why banking and finance? No idea. I just needed anything other than the law. My academic background was law and psychology, but I forgot that I loved the psychology part and I just went along with the flow. When I was in banking, I knew that I had the competence at year 3 or 4. Initially I didn't and I felt like a fraud, but by year 3 or 4 I knew I could do the job. I knew I could deliver because I had a track record and I was receiving so much recognition at work. And then I had one manager who would make me doubt everything. Everything. And it wasn't even him saying anything. It was just the way that he showed up, the way that he would come to meetings, the way that he would ask questions. And I couldn't figure it out. And I was getting really worried. I was then getting really in my head. What am I doing? Have I been mistaken this entire time? Maybe I'm not as good as I think I am. And it was every single time. And then I spoke to the girl that had the role before me, the young woman who had the role before me. And she said, I thought I was the only one. He made me feel that way too. So that was really reassuring that it wasn't just me. He had certain tendencies that led us, and this is the other thing, no one can make you feel a certain way. You allow yourself to feel a certain way because of something they're doing. So it is a choice that we're allowing to happen. There were certain things he did, like he wouldn't make a lot of eye contact and he would be staring at his notes. And so that makes you feel like you're wasting his time. That was the first piece. The second thing is that he would say something one meeting and then the next meeting ask why you hadn't done something else. And you're thinking, hold on, but you asked me to do that. That's why I didn't do that. So there were all of these things that lead you to doubt yourself. Now, he had no idea, of course, that he was having this effect on people, but it was really affecting us. So I then had to learn, what can I do? So if I'm anticipating this person is like this, and I can't cut him out of my life, he's my boss, right? My manager. So how do I compensate? How do I give him what he's clearly seeking and make it easier for me? So the first thing I did is before I went into those meetings, I had a little pump up playlist that I would listen to because I knew that he was going to sap my energy, or rather, no, I was going to allow my energy to be sapped when I was around him, right? I like to take ownership. That's the first thing. And we know that rituals like this can really help with your performance. Whether it's in sports, whether it's in the health and fitness world, having something that you do before that primes you can help you get into the zone and increase your performance. So that was the first thing. The second thing I did was determine, okay, what is it about him that is leading me to feel this way? Well, he's not making eye contact, so I'm not going to look at him either. Because if I'm waiting for connection and he's not giving it to me, I'm just going to look away and talk. And that really helped. The third thing was that he kept changing his mind and not realizing that he'd already told you one thing before and then changed it the next time. So I would have notes that I'd write at the end of each meeting, email them to him, say, this is my action based on what we discussed. And then at the next meeting, I'd show him. So if he said, why didn't you do X? I'd say, well, if we have a look, last week you told me to do Y, which I did. Would you like me to also do X? And he was being almost put on notice that, hey, you kind of need to be a little bit more organized here. But I also made it easier for him because he was able to remember, that's right, I did tell you to do that. And that helped me. So all of that to say that, yes, there are going to be people in our lives that we cannot necessarily cut out. Find a way to work with them. Anticipate that they're going to be a certain way. Don't allow them to sap your level of confidence or conviction.
Yeah. I mean, I've definitely encountered many, how I would describe as energy vampires throughout my life. Like they're not even necessarily aware of it. They don't have like malintent.
No.
But it's just that maybe it's in their nonverbal cues. It doesn't like they'll ask you a question and then it doesn't seem like they're receiving your answers. They might be interested, but it just seems like they're always they're never satisfied with the answer that you're giving them. So you feel like with every response you're just throwing yourself again and again against a closed door.
Yeah.
And it's like they're not aware of it. But they're energy vampires, and I've learned over time to more, I guess, rapidly or efficiently identify those people and like not give them any energy.
No, completely, and it's because energy is contagious. So emotional contagious is really well documented in the literature. In the kind of mid-2010s, they identified that there are certain regions in the brain, mirror neurons, which are essentially determining what other people are feeling at any given time. And it's part of our social evolution. It helps keep us safe and alive. So these parts of the brain are interpreting what are people feeling right now. And then what they do is mimic that. So then you feel that too, which allows you to better connect with somebody. But also if someone just has that negative, pessimistic energy, you are more likely to catch that negative, pessimistic energy. And it's not even something you voluntarily do. But again, we need to remember that I love coming back to this idea of choice and ownership. In those moments, it's really easy to say, well, I have no choice, it's happening. And in a way, yes, it is, because it's the default way the brain operates. But you can still, by not actively redirecting your attention, you're still choosing to let it happen. I remember when I was studying law and ethics, we were looking at, you can either make a choice or you can make a choice by not making a choice. That is still a choice. And when you realize that, it's really empowering because you realize, okay, I can choose at any point in time to change my attention, change my focus, reframe my thinking. And if I don't, then I'm choosing not to. So again, it just re-empowers you with choice. So going back to what we were talking about, the idea of other people in our lives, energy is contagious. Also, you might say, okay, well, can I positively influence someone who is negative? It's much harder to do because of the brain's negativity bias, but you can do it through consistently being the same way around them. Because then they start to anticipate, oh, this person is always positive and optimistic and real with me. And then they start to anticipate that, and then they might start to match that as well. So that's one piece. But the other piece is sometimes there are people who may not necessarily be negative. They're not negative energy vampires, but when we're around them, we start doubting ourselves. We feel like our goals are too big. We feel like our dreams are not going to happen because of subtle ways that they respond to us and the subtle things that they say. Again, they may not be aware of it. And this is the power of what's called social contagion, where we catch the beliefs and the mindsets of other people, and also what's called verbal persuasion, which comes out of the work on self-efficacy, which is that belief of, yeah, I can do the thing. When you're around these people, you will know, because you find that it makes you dampen your goals. It makes you not want to share your dreams. It also makes you question whether you want to try doing that thing or take on that opportunity or say the thing, because that person has already told me that it's probably not going to work. and I don't want to prove them right, so I'm just not going to do it. And then you keep yourself small.
Yeah.
There's something called the Pygmalion and the Golem effects. Okay, so let's explore these. When you're around people who genuinely believe in you and tell you so, they don't have to say, Max, you're amazing, but it's more like, that's an amazing goal. Cool. Let me know how I can support. You can tell they believe in you. When you're around those people, you are more likely to live up to their expectations of you. On a subconscious level, you're not even aware of it. So if they believe in you, there's a part of your psyche that goes, maybe I should believe in me too. Maybe I can do this. And then you're more likely to perform. That's the Pygmalion effect. And it's been observed in classrooms, between teachers and students, between parents and their kids, in workplaces, even in the military. It's fascinating.
Wow.
Now, the inverse is that if you're around people who don't really believe in you, think your goals are too out there, and often this happens to be family, unfortunately, or close friends who knew you before your growth journey, right? That's like a whole other thing we could talk about. When you're around them, you tend to shrink. You tend to underperform. You tend to hold yourself back. And then you lower your performance and your expectations to where they have them. That's called the Golem effect. And this is why it is so important to be aware of who is in your circle. There's that quote where you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. There's no scientific validation for the number 5, but there are countless studies that demonstrate this effect is absolutely real. And so we need to be aware of it.
Yeah.
One quick tip I want to share for anyone who has been on a growth journey, whether that is a health and wellness journey, whether that's a self-development journey, you will find that there are people in your life who will say something to you that can feel really off-putting and uncomfortable. And they might say something like, Max, you've changed. Have you ever heard that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do we respond to those people?
How do we respond to those people? In those moments, it feels like they're trying to undermine your growth. It feels really uncomfortable. You might try and prove yourself and say, no, I haven't. I'm still the same person, and try and seek back their validation, because it's not usually a positive, right? It's usually coming from a place of, it's got a negative intent, and it's usually a reflection of their insecurity. Or your growth is shining a spotlight on all the ways they have not grown and have stayed stagnant.
Amen.
So what do we say? I found that the most effective response that elevates your sense of big trust and also gives them permission to recognize that they could do the same is this. When someone says, you've changed, reply with, thanks for noticing.
I like that. And often it's like you're not even changing. You're just revealing more of yourself.
Exactly, who you truly are.
Yeah.
Completely. And when you say thanks for noticing, and then also we have this second line that we like to add in there, thanks for noticing, growth has been a priority for me. Or my health has been a priority for me. My physical wellness has been a priority for me. What you're demonstrating is that it is a positive, it's a compliment. Thank you. I've been working on it. You also unintentionally give them permission to recognize, so if I make it a priority, maybe I could also experience the same growth that they have. So it's this beautiful way of shifting someone's insecurity into something that could be positive. Because you're not saying, yeah, I'm better than you. It's no, I've been working on this. And it's a fantastic way not to feel like you have to prove yourself or win back their approval or justify anything. So simple.
Yeah, well, it's a really kind of low-key denigrating way to address it's a low-key neg towards somebody when you say you've changed, because the subtext is not you've changed for the better.
No.
The subtext is you've changed for the worse.
Yeah.
So it's not a nice thing to say to somebody ever, but it's also not a nice thing to receive.
No, exactly.
I get that occasionally on social media from commenters that, might have been following me for some time. And then around 2020, when I became a little bit more outspoken about some of the socio-political, cultural things that I was seeing going on in the world around me, I became more outspoken about my perspective on, what I was seeing out in the world. And because that was... there was a bit of, it was a different way for, I guess, some people who had followed me over the years to think about me from, going from somebody who was just talking about like macros and, protein and nutrients and brain health to somebody who was suddenly opining about stuff that was going on, beyond the field of nutrition. I would sometimes get from these like low effort, like low investment commenters like, oh, Max, you've changed. And my response would be like, no, I actually haven't changed at all. Like my work has always been, and my mission has always been to ease suffering in the world and to leave the world a better place than I came into it. And yeah, right now that involves talking about, stuff beyond the scope of nutrition. So to me, it was always like a head scratcher of a comment. And which I've just intuitively been able to like shrug off. But I can see how people with less conviction might take that in another way.
And you know what a great response would be to those commenters? Thanks for noticing.
Yeah.
I'm so happy to be in a place now where I can share all of me.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? So it's like, my content has changed. Thank you for acknowledging that. This is who I am.
Amen.
Amen.
So I want to go back to confidence.
Yeah.
I want to see if I can synthesize how to appear more confident. So what you were saying at the beginning of our conversation is that competent action begets confidence, not the other way around. So sometimes we expect that we've got to be confident in order to be competent in terms of our actions and our behaviors, but in fact, we can act our way to a more confident mindset.
Absolutely right.
Which is like really empowering.
Completely.
Because we can't always control, like the biochemical, neurochemical cocktail that is that's informing our behaviors.
Exactly. Well said. And a lot of people think you have to think your way or feel your way into confidence. I say, no, you can act your way into confidence. Because again, you're getting those proof points. Now, if we go a little bit deeper, because we've kind of touched on worry and we've touched on the role of the people around you, there is this fascinating framework that I uncovered during my PhD research and that we have evolved, and it's truly, truly phenomenal. I actually don't know. It comes from, again, over 50 years worth of literature, and it is not more widespread rather. It's not mainstream, and I don't understand why. And I think one of the reasons is that this framework, okay, let me rewind and talk about how we came across the framework. So confidence and your degree of trust in yourself, whether you can trust yourself, comes down to the how you see yourself part. Do you see yourself as someone who is worthy, who is capable, who can make choices in your life, who can manage the emotions that come with difficult things? Because if you don't see yourself as those things, then you fundamentally do not trust yourself. And you can't fake your way to trust. And so when we look at how you see yourself, it really comes down to recognizing that there are 4 drivers of how we see ourselves, which is fascinating as well. Because a lot of the time we talk about this concept of self-image. Your self-image is your blueprint for how you live your life. And most people acknowledge, yes, that is accurate. But what makes up your self-image? Different people have different views on that. When we look at all this literature and this research, there are 4 things. When they converge, they create what's called your core self-evaluations, your deepest view of how you see yourself. So let's unpack these 4 things, and then I'll share with you why I think it hasn't become more widely spread, more well known. Yeah, thanks. I'm getting the words mixed up. So the very first one relates to self-esteem. How do you view yourself in terms of your worthiness? Do you feel like you're enough? Do you feel like you're of value? And again, it's shaped very early on in our lives. If you felt like you received emotional validation as a kid, you generally have a higher level of self-esteem. If you felt like you didn't need to perform or get the best grades in order to be celebrated by your parents, you develop a high sense of self-esteem. If you did feel like you needed to get the grades or perform really well or be the top in your whatever to get your parents to pay attention to you, you start to equate your value to your performance. From a very early age, I must perform and be perfect to be loved. And that creates a sense of self-esteem as adults, which often just reinforces those early patterns. So that's the first one. The second one is self-efficacy. Self-efficacy is the belief that you can do the thing, which means you have the skills, the abilities, the resources to set a goal and achieve the goal. Really important. The third one is what's called locus of control, which refers to, locus comes from the Latin loci, which means location. Where are you placing control in your life? Do you believe that you have some degree of control in shaping your path? Or do you feel like it's out of your hands? It's determined by luck, fate, powerful others, the government. Because whether you believe that you have some degree of control or you don't, shapes how powerful you feel and shapes the kind of choices that you make or don't make. Because if you feel powerless, you suddenly stop making choices,
And
and then nothing changes.
Internal locus of control versus external locus of control.
Internal is where we believe we shape our path. Of course, acknowledging there are things that we cannot control, like the weather, like the injustice on the other side of the world, but we know we can control our thoughts, our behaviors, our responses, how we show up in the world. So that's the third. Then the fourth is what's called emotional stability, which is your ability to manage your emotions. How you see yourself across these four things. Bear in mind, it's not objective. So it's not objectively like how well you can achieve your goals or how well you manage your emotions. It's how you see it. So it's perception. These things determine your self-image, your core self-evaluation. Now, I think a lot of the time, because this is a personality trait or a collection of personality traits formed early on, very stable across the lifespan. So I think when people have come at it from the perspective of this is personality related, the response is, oh, then I guess it's just who I am. I can't change it. Because people think personality is something that you are stuck with forever. Because for a very long time, that's what the research told us. In fact, that's what the research still tells us, that it is stable across the lifespan. But there is a caveat here. It is stable unless you choose to intervene. And so you can intervene with what's called an intervention, where you can target a specific trait or a number of traits and go through a process of changing that element of your personality, which I think is phenomenal. So we tested this. When I was doing the PhD, we had one study, which was a 6-week program, to determine whether people can change their baseline levels of what's called action orientation. So it's that inclination to just take action. It's basically what big trust allows you to do, right? So we wanted to determine. So we put them through a training. We then had another group doing an unrelated training on communication. And then we had another group doing no training. Why we had to have that second group in there is because any kind of training will have some positive effect. We need to determine whether the effect that we see is a result of fundamentally changing the action orientation collection of traits, or whether it's just because they were part of a training and that's exciting and that changes how you see yourself. So we had the 3 groups, we had the 6 weeks, we tested them before, after, and then 1 month after this intervention. And we found that just in that period, there was a statistically significant increase in their personality trait of action orientation, which is wild. That's 6 weeks. And it lasted for 1 month later. And if we did another 3-month or a 12-month follow-up, it probably would have lasted. So what does this tell us? You can fundamentally change who you are. The brain is essentially, it's this neuroplastic feature in our bodies, right? We can continually create new pathways. We can continually evolve who we are. We just have to choose to and then know what to do. And that's essentially what I've got in Big Trust. It's this proven framework to help you change these 4 personality traits. But something that we do differently, again, because when we say trait, people are like, oh, that's just who I am. I can't change it. So we've decided to focus on the trainable capacity or the trainable habit that then lifts that personality trait. So we don't talk about self-esteem. We talk about the habit of self-acceptance. When you start to develop the ability to accept yourself for who you are, you no longer take feedback personally. You no longer feel like you need the validation of other people because you accept who you are. You no longer feel like you're afraid of failing because if I fail, then it means I'm a failure and then people will reject me. You just accept this is who I am and I'm capable of growing. So that's the first one, it's self-acceptance. The second, which relates to self-efficacy, is the trainable habit or capacity of agency. It's, hey, I can set a goal and I know that I have existing skills and I have resources and I have capacities. And even if I don't know how to do it right now, I believe I can learn. And then even if it doesn't work out, I believe I can learn from that and then do it better next time. That's the habit of agency. The third habit, which links to the internal locus of control, is what we call autonomy. It's the ability to make choices, to take ownership, to focus on what you can control, and to believe that you have some degree of control over the outcome of your life. And then the fourth, which was emotional stability, we refer to that as the trainable capacity of adaptability. Specifically, can you adapt to the emotions that come your way? Or do you just accept them and feel like this is it and this is a verdict, I'm not meant to do this and this is too overwhelming? Or do you say, okay, this is what I'm feeling. What can I do about it? Is it helping me right now? Is it hindering me? Can I reframe it? Can I channel it? Can I harness it? And so when we're talking about confidence, which if we rewind, it's the ability to trust yourself before, you need to trust yourself across these 4 dimensions. And again, I go into so much more detail in the book, but I think we can dive into some really tangible tools for everybody.
Yeah, would love that. But also, how would you address cynics who are like, this is all well and good, but these are kind of luxury beliefs. I'm too old, or I'm too, bogged down with life's myriad responsibilities. I've got kids, I've got bills to pay. Like, I can't really change that much of my life right now.
So that is a reflection of low autonomy, which is that 3rd pillar. You feel like you don't have control, and therefore you're leaning on that so that you don't have to take ownership, so that you don't do anything and then nothing changes. Now, I was speaking to an audience very recently and I was sharing autonomy. And she said, but what if you have so much going on that you actually just want to cruise? You don't want to grow. You want to just stay comfortable. And I said, that's great, but that's still a choice that you're making. So I would say to people who say there's too much going on, they don't have the time, that's okay if you don't want to grow right now. Just acknowledge that my priority right now is raising my young family. My priority right now is building my business. But I need to also acknowledge that if I don't address these 4 things, I will stay stuck. And that can be a choice. You might be happy with stuck. There are some people who live very happy lives in their comfort zone. They're happy, they're fulfilled. Are they reaching their full potential? Who knows? Probably not. But that's okay. What is the point of life? It's not to succeed and be amazing. It's to actually find a way to be of value and service to other people, develop your own qualities. And
it's not to be successful by somebody else's standards.
No, exactly.
It's to be successful by your own.
Exactly. And that might be yours. Being the best possible parent might be yours. You don't need to trust yourself more to say yes to that opportunity, speak to that person, do amazing things in that regard. Your amazing things might be, I'm going to be the best mother or the best father for my kids, right?
Exactly.
So again, all comes down to choice. One thing that we do need to acknowledge is that this idea of I can't change is disproven by research. So if you want to hold on to that belief, go for it, but you're discounting the fact that neuroscience shows us the incredible power of being able to retrain the brain. Okay, I want to share with you a story that illustrates just how powerful the brain is. And it's something I experienced. I know all the research, not all the research, but I know a lot of the research on the brain's ability to rewire itself and what's going on here. And I did that 5-year deep dive. I've never had my own experience where I went, wow, that's powerful in terms of my own brain doing something cool. So when I was doing these last 5 years, it was very, very hard for me. And so I have a lot of respect for anyone who's gone through that process. My memory started to really suffer. So by year 3 of doing this research and writing this dissertation, I couldn't remember things. Both my long-term and my short-term memory had become terrible. I'd have conversations with my husband and he'd say, we talked about this 2 days ago. Do you not remember? I had no recollection of it. I would have a conversation with someone in the morning. By the end of the day, I couldn't remember who I spoke to or what I said. And this is a problem for me because a lot of our business is working with companies and leaders and people and about the research and applying these insights that we're learning. I couldn't even remember them. This was really concerning. Now, it became even more concerning because I read a case study of a woman who was about my age who had something similar where she started forgetting things. And she kind of brushed it off because life was busy. She had her kids, she had her business. She kept brushing it off until she finally sought help when it was really bad. And they discovered some kind of brain-eating bacteria that was affecting the parts of her brain responsible for memory. And then she had gone to get help too late, and now her life is fundamentally different because she cannot remember. And naturally, my brain starts catastrophizing and thinking, oh my gosh, I've got a brain-eating bacteria. What's going on? It's eating my brain. So I didn't even tell my husband. I started doing research to find a neurologist to try and help me figure out what's going on with my brain. And then as I was doing that, I was going down this rabbit hole and then looking at all these other things. And then like my shoulder pain suddenly became confirmation that, oh my gosh, the bacteria's in my shoulder, as we do, the worries. But then I also reminded myself of neuroplasticity. And the fact that sometimes we just have a lot going on. And maybe I'm just cognitively and emotionally exhausted. And so my brain, which is trying to keep me safe, goes, well, you know what? Remembering things is not so important to your survival right now. So I'm not going to prioritize that. So I thought, what if I tried a little mini experiment on myself? What if I set myself a memory game where every time I met someone new, at the cafe, in the street, the Uber driver, the client, I asked them their name at the beginning, and then I repeated it back to them, and then I made an effort to try and remember it, and then at the end of the conversation, without looking at my notes, I would say their name again. And I found that the more I did this, okay, the first few times it was really difficult, but the more I did this, the easier it became. Now, not only that, now the weirdest thing, so this is like years later, I still like to ask people their names. And then I get to the end of the conversation and I don't remember their name, but then a name will pop into my mind and I'll say, was your name Richard? Yeah, it was Richard. The name is being served to me by my brain because I've determined that that is important to me. And how we're wired is that we magnify what we deem is important. And so something has happened within me, within my brain, my mind, the interactions between the two, where it is determined that people's names are important to me and it will serve up that information to me. And that is weird. To be in a, like when I'm getting off a plane and I've asked the air hostess what her name was once at the beginning, and I'm getting off and I'm like, bye, Jack. I remembered her name. I didn't even know where that came from. This is the power of the fact that we can retrain our brain. Not only that, it's also the power of acknowledging. Okay, I'm going to share with you an analogy or a little story. So there was a psychology professor and he stood at the front of his class and he held up a glass of water. So this is a mug, but he held up a glass of water, full of water. And he asked the group, how heavy is this glass? And these students are yelling out what they think, how heavy the glass is. And he's just looking at them. And then he looks at the glass and he says, you know, the absolute weight of this glass doesn't matter to how heavy it is to me. How heavy it is to me depends on how long I hold it. If I hold it to take a sip, it's not very heavy. If I hold it for 20 minutes, it's going to feel a little heavier. If I hold it for 3 hours, my muscles are going to cramp and I might end up dropping it. Suddenly it's extremely heavy. Now, the message here that he was getting to is that we're all holding a bunch of mugs or cups in our lives. And sometimes we feel like we have to hold them all the time. Cognitive load, emotional load, physical load. You can put the cup down at any time. And take a step back and ask yourself, just because I can hold all of these things, should I be holding all of these things? And I love that analogy because for me, during that time of my intense research, I was holding too many cups. And the cup of memory was gone. It was when I was finished that I recognized, okay, the reason why I didn't have the ability to recall things was just because I had too much on. And in our lives, especially, I mean, I think women experience this in a unique way because of the cognitive load that comes with being mothers and also like the household duties and everything. But of course, men experience it too. We're carrying so much. We just need to acknowledge there's only so much that we can do, right? So we talk about a number of loads in the book. There's cognitive load, which is simply the amount of overthinking, the to-do lists, all the things that are there that need to be done. I've got to do the laundry, I need to pick up the kids, this deadline is coming. And then you've got people who struggle with acceptance who are thinking, why hasn't that person replied to my email? Do they hate me? What did that person's comment mean in that meeting? Did I say something? So we're also overthinking about these things. This makes our cognitive cup really heavy. We also have an emotional cup, which is how many emotions we're dealing with throughout the day that we're not working through. The stress, the anxiety, the frustration, the guilt, the shame. We have a stimulation cup, which is how much time we're spending on social media, how many dings and pings and tabs we have open. But not only that, stimulation also comes from other people. So if you're someone who is naturally an introvert or prefers quiet time, even having interactions with other people at work, online, that's filling your cup. And then you've got your physical cup. Right? If you are not getting enough sleep, if you're not exercising, if you're not eating right, your cup is going to be overflowing because you're not doing the right things. So then the next question is, how do you know which cup to put down? How do you figure that out? And I have another little story that I will share to demonstrate this.
Please, yeah.
Well, actually, before we go in there, Max, which cup of yours do you think is maybe a little too heavy? Do you feel like you've got a pretty good handle on those cups?
That's an interesting question. I think I've got a pretty good handle on my current array of cups, the cups that I currently am juggling. Yeah, I mean, I probably my family is kind of split up right now. I live here in Los Angeles. My other brother, one of my brothers just moved back to LA, but 50% of my family is currently in Las Vegas.
Oh, wow.
Which is super weird. But they live there. And so, it's kind of uncomfortable for me to have my family divided. Like, I'm a big family person. So that's, that's like been frustrating at times. But yeah, I mean, I love the, what I'm getting from this is that feelings aren't facts.
Yes.
But sometimes they often feel like objective reality when
Yes.
they're usually anything but. So I will sometimes feel lonely, and and it's helpful to remind myself that I'm not ever lonely. Like, I've got the parasocial relationship that I have with everybody listening to this podcast, that follows me on social media, that's read my books. I've got my relationship with my family, who's never really that far away. I can get in my car at any moment and drive out to Vegas and hang with them. I've got my friends, of course. But yeah, the feeling sometimes that I get is that of loneliness, which is very uncomfortable for me.
And it's fascinating you mentioned that, because when we have a cup that is too heavy for us, it can amplify existing vulnerabilities to self-doubt, to feelings of insecurity, to feelings of loneliness. And we just look at the end pieces, which is, oh no, I'm so lonely. Oh no, I've got so much self-doubt. Oh no, I feel like a fraud. Oh no, I'm afraid of failure. When actually we're not addressing the underlying element, which is just you can put a glass down. You can put a cup down. You can go and reach out to someone. You can call someone. You can take a step back. So the next question that we ask then is, how do you determine which cup you need to put down? How do you determine what the next step is? Because when we're in life, it's so easy to conflate feelings and thoughts with who we are. We internalize them. So I'm going to take you back in time to the year, when was this? Maybe 2009? I had just started learning how to do salsa dancing. So I'm a former professional and competitive Latin dancer. I did that during my university days and early years in work. For me, I needed an outlet because I was so confused as to what I was doing with my career.
You're quite the underachiever. Yeah. Professional dancer, lawyer, PhD.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you haven't yet accomplished or that you're looking to accomplish that you haven't yet?
For me, no, I think, if we look at that doubt profile, right, my own doubt profile, those 4 things, I'm lower on acceptance. I'm high on autonomy most of the time, but low on acceptance. What does that mean? A lot of my decisions have been driven by not feeling like I'm enough. And so it started very early on in life, but then also like even doing the law degree, I never felt like I belonged. I felt like an outsider. So I felt like I had to prove myself. Again, driven by a lack of acceptance. Working in the legal industry, I was so full of insecurity that I made myself physically sick. I was going to various specialists, no one could figure out what it was, and then finally they're like, it's stress related. Because when I'm not at work, I'm fine. And then when I went into banking, same thing. And then when I did the MBA, same thing. When I did the PhD, same thing. I'm like, maybe I will feel like I'm enough when I do all this stuff. No, I can guarantee you never feel like you're enough if you're trying to chase it.
Do you feel like you're enough today?
I am on the journey. And because I know of the importance of it, yes, I remind myself. Enough doesn't mean that you are perfect. It doesn't mean that you stop growing. It just means that I acknowledge that I am a product of my past, but I'm not a prisoner to it. I can keep learning and growing and developing. And so I definitely know that intellectually. Feeling it is a different thing. So I still have issues like if I find out someone doesn't like me, oh my gosh, no, how can I win back their approval? Just these little things. But let me take you back to, so early years of university, just started learning how to dance. And our class we had class on a Monday night. So I was like a beginner very early on. Actually, funny story there, because I had danced as a kid, when I went and did beginner, I was so impatient. I said, can I just pay you to do private lessons, to do beginner, intermediate, and advanced all at once? And the instructor said, just come to all the classes. You can do beginner, intermediate, and advanced at once, but just do the classes, not the privates. You'll get more out of it. So I, impatience, needed to do it. It was super fun. But then we needed to practice. So after class on a Monday night, our group would go to a local kind of dance club where they just play Latin music and you get to just dance with each other. I walked in first time and the bottom floor was a chaotic mess of movement and hands and beats. I felt so unsafe because there was so much uncertainty and so much movement and chaos. And I froze. And then my friend who was with me grabbed me by the arm, yanked me, because it could have been a bit dangerous, pulled me up the side to a little staircase to a balcony, which I saw had a lot of beginner and intermediate dancing at a much slower pace. But from that vantage point, when I looked down, suddenly I felt more safe because I'm not going to get hit. You know, anyone who has done Latin dancing knows that like an elbow to the face is common, both whether you're the lead or the follower. It's happened many times. But I was looking over this balcony thinking, oh, wow, I can actually see the movements now. I can see the patterns. They're doing this turn pattern. Oh, cool, they're doing that. So it gave me this completely new perspective where I could see what was happening. It also became a superpower because by watching, I was able to emulate and learn much faster. And we'd stay up there in our comfort zone. On occasion, you know, by the third, fourth, fifth time we went, we'd go down and practice with the professionals and then retreat up with the other beginners. But that idea of having a balcony that you can turn to get out of the chaos of what's going on underneath is really powerful. And we need to take that idea into our lives as well, because life is chaotic. Life is busy. We have all these goals, we have all these things we need to do, we have these people who need us and these places we need to get to, and then there's also just getting food on the table for yourself, for your family. There's a lot going on, and it can feel very unsafe and unsettling, even though it's quite predictable. But when you have that desire within you where your cups are overflowing, it's going to feel quite unsafe. And that's why we often have that undercurrent of anxiety, that cortisol-fueled activity, the overthinking, the inability to sleep, you know, the dopamine addiction. These are all ways to distract ourselves from what's really happening. And so I encourage people to create perspective in their lives by creating their own balcony moments, to pull yourself out of the chaos of the day-to-day, have that moment to reflect, to zoom out and notice and identify patterns. What is going well? What is not? Where are my cups at? And which cup do I need to put down for a while? And so for some people, when we speak to a lot of leaders or a lot of entrepreneurs, they will carve out time with their partner, maybe on a Sunday afternoon. They'll have an hour where they talk about them and their relationship and their week to come. I know other people who have kids who will use it also as an opportunity to say, okay, who's taking this kid to swimming? Who's going to do this? They do that together. Other people who are entrepreneurs on their own will just reflect on, okay, what does my last week look like? What does this week look like? How am I feeling about things? Do I feel like I need to reach out to someone for help? Am I feeling quite lonely? Do I need to up my exercise? Do I need to shift my exercise to something more high intensity, low intensity? It just gives you that ability to take that step back, zoom out. And again, it's powerful and simple and helps you recognize that sometimes the solution is not more trust, it's just putting down some of your cups because you already do trust yourself, but you're so distracted by everything else and the weight that you're carrying that you can't see that.
Yeah. There's a saying, whoever discovered water probably wasn't a fish. Sometimes it's very hard to see the mess when you're in it.
Yes.
But I love this idea of the concept of taking a balcony moment.
Yeah. And it's simple. A lot of leadership strategists talk about it as being on the business, not in the business. Same idea. You can only see as far as your eyes will go when you're in something. As soon as you pull yourself away from it, you're able to strategize, you're able to see from a different perspective, not get so caught up in all the emotions, and then make the right kind of decisions that are going to be the best for you.
I love that. Yeah, I have a special relationship with the word trust. When I set out to, I mean, my story with regards to health advocacy began when my mom got sick over a decade ago at this point. She developed a rare form of dementia that crept up in her late 50s, which is very young. And I was in between jobs at that point. I had left this gig that I had had for 6 years. It was my first job out of college. I was a presenter on TV in the United States as a generalist journalist. And I left that job, which was an incredible job, very cushy job, where I felt I was not only earning a living, but I was earning a living doing something that I felt was really important. And I was living in Hollywood as somebody in my 20s. That was a really fun time for me, you know. But at the end of the day, I wasn't here doing like, you know, frivolous, superfluous like entertainment stuff. I was a journalist on TV, and so that it was a really meaningful job for me. And that when that job ran its course, I really struggled to find like the next gig. Because it was just that rare of an opportunity, particularly in Hollywood. And I was essentially unemployable as anything other than a host or a presenter, because that's what I had did for 6 years post-college. So I was in my late 20s, about to enter my 30s, and I had done nothing but write copy and produce content. And there was basically no other outlet for me. This is just at the very beginning of YouTube. And then in my personal life, so YouTube wasn't yet nobody really saw it as a viable career to be a YouTuber at that point yet.
Oh, how things have changed.
Oh, how things have changed. Or content creator or podcaster, that hadn't existed yet. And it certainly wasn't on my radar to become an author. And then in my personal life, my mom, the most important person in my life, was diagnosed with this incurable, terminal, progressive, degenerative condition. And it was like an atom bomb going off in my world. So my career prospects, I was still I had all the energy of somebody in their late 20s, but my career prospects were essentially in the toilet. I felt like I had, had this amazing gig for 6 years, but ultimately that all I had done was deferred, my post-college job search. But now I was at a disadvantage because I was in my late 20s, so I was essentially unemployable. And then my mom was sick, and I had to essentially move back to New York to try to understand what was going on with her. And so I felt just absolutely lost. And on top of that, I was, I had this job, so I had some riz in terms of public notoriety, but it hadn't paid me a lot. So I wasn't wealthy, I wasn't famous. So I was getting broker by the day. My personal life was growing increasingly tragic with my mom, and it was incredibly upsetting, and I had to be there for my family, of course. And my job prospects were essentially in the toilet. And so it was a really depressing time. I mean, it was rock bottom for me. But I remember specifically latching onto the word trust, that I had to trust myself, that whatever had gotten me that job that I had gotten out of college on TV with all the accolades and whatever that came with that I just had to trust that there was something in me that was going to find a way. It was my balcony moment, I guess, at that point. And I started learning all that I could about nutrition and health, lifestyle, as it pertained to the category of, conditions that my mom had developed. And I just started seeding the world with what I was learning as I was learning it in real time, with no real career, no path had been laid out in front of me. There was no precedent for what I, aspired to do. And again, writing a book was not on my radar at that point. But I just kept putting out value into the world for free, on social media, learning, sharing, and ultimately sharing, because I knew that the best way to learn was to teach. So I was, doing my best to teach whatever followers I had at that point about what I was learning in real time. And but it was the word trust that I would always come back to, just trust yourself. You don't see the path yet. The path hasn't revealed itself. Your future, how you're going to earn a living hasn't revealed itself, but it will. As long as you trust yourself, you don't doubt yourself, you listen to the criticism, but you don't internalize it. And I just kept doing that every day. I just showed up, and I would do one thing, differently that would just in a way advance my mission just a little bit further. My dad would say just push the stone, every day, just push the stone a little bit further. And ultimately all these opportunities revealed themselves to me, and it snowballed, and now I have this career that I'm incredibly proud of and grateful for every day. But yeah, it was the word trust. I remember I had a friend of mine launch this company where he was inscribing intention words on a bracelet. The company was called My Intent, if I recall correctly. And the word that I picked was trust. And every day I would just multiple times a day, I would notice the word trust, and I would just it would be a reminder to just always trust whatever it was in me that had gotten me to that point, was going to carry me forward.
That is beautiful.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry to hear about your mother.
Oh, thanks. It's part of my story.
Yeah.
And everybody has sickness in their family, or hopefully not, but we all go at some point. We're all just walking each other home at the end of the day, right?
That's a nice way to put it.
Yeah. I didn't know it. It's a Ram Dass quote. Yeah, we're all just walking each other home. But yeah, that's my story. And
That's beautiful.
yeah, and I just remember but I have definitely been at rock bottom. And in all the ways that one can be at rock bottom, all the ways. And it was that word that propelled me forward.
And that's, I guess, the power of trust. Can we unpack your story a little?
Yeah.
Based on these 4 attributes?
Of course.
What I love about what you said is that it's trust, but it's not just trust that things will work out. It's trust that you have what it takes. And because of that, things will work out.
Yeah.
So if we look at what you went through, there was a defining moment for you, which was your mother. And as you said, a lot of us will go through incredible suffering. In my view, everyone suffers in some way.
Everybody,
just
yeah.
at different degrees. And what is huge for one person may not be for another, but what is small for one person, yet feels huge to them, would be nothing to another. So we can never judge someone else's suffering. A lot of people go through some kind of suffering and allow it to define them, their self-image. So they'd go through something like that or something similar and say, life is so unfair. Why does this happen to me? And that's a signal of low autonomy. And it might not be as huge as something like this. It could be a layoff. It could be you injure yourself at the gym and you're not able to do anything for 6 weeks. It could be you're evicted from your place, or whatever it is, right? There are hard things that happen and we have a choice. We can become bitter or we can choose to become better. And this all relates to your autonomy, where you're choosing to focus, and the narrative identity that you were associating with that. What is narrative identity? All of us have a story about who we are that we tell ourselves, and we often tell to other people through how we show up and what we say. And that story about who we are defines how we feel about our lives. If you feel like a victim, because of the way the brain is wired, confirmation bias, selective attention, you will tune into information that confirms your beliefs. You will find examples of why you are the victim. That person cut me off. Life is so unfair. I get every single red light. I can never maintain my exercise routine at the gym. Something's wrong. You continually find ways to reinforce it. You might seek out relationships that lead you to further victimize yourself. Because there's something called self-verification, which was determined or discovered by William Swan, which is this phenomenon where we are driven to seek out and reinforce the beliefs that we have about ourselves. We want to verify our self-image. So whatever belief you have about yourself, you will find ways to confirm it.
Whatever you believe. Whether positive or negative.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And this happens more often when the negative, because it keeps you stuck, right? Whereas if you believe that you're worthy, that you can learn, that you can trust yourself and things will work out because of that, you will find ways to keep reaffirming that. And then what happens? Your life fundamentally changes. So that's narrative identity. And in one of the chapters, we go through this process of determining what is your current identity in terms of the narrative you're sharing. How do we use techniques from what's called narrative therapy to then change that story? Because Dr. Dan McAdams, who has studied this for 40 years, has found that you can change your story by editing the meaning that you have applied to that story. Are you internalizing it? I'm not enough. This is not fair. It always happens to me. Or are you learning from it? In fact, there's this fascinating body of work that not a lot of people know about. When a lot of people experience trauma, they also experience PTSD, post-traumatic stress, right? And so there's this very clear correlation, extreme trauma, PTSD. But there is also a very large body of people who don't experience PTSD, they experience post-traumatic growth. They grow from the experience. And the defining factor for them is one quality, and that is curiosity. They choose to be curious about the experience, about how they're feeling about the experience, about what it could be teaching them or how it could be strengthening them. And I think that is so beautiful, because curiosity is something we can bring to every situation, every interaction. In fact, one of the things I love about curiosity. So Max, let's say you're having an interaction. Okay, let's say I walked in here today and I was a little bit rude when you met me. You might conclude, gosh, she's arrogant. Gosh, she's rude. Gosh, she's up herself. And you've made an assessment about me and my personality based on a very small interaction. What you may not have known is that right before I came into that interaction, I just found out that my son was in hospital. I don't have kids, but I'm just, for illustrative purposes, my son is in hospital because he broke his arm, or I just got evicted, or my house burned down, or my husband's been cheating on me, right? We don't know what happened immediately before the interaction that we have, but we assume that that is all there is. It's called wasiati. Dan Kahneman has come up with this term, wasiati, which sounds like a different language, but it's an acronym for what you see is all there is. And it's this bias that the brain has. We want to draw conclusions based on a very short interaction. And I see this most common with people. Your barista is rude. You make all these assessments about his personality. But that barista's having a really hard day. The previous customer just abused him on the spot or was racist or whatever, right? And so what curiosity allows you to do is ask, what else could be going on for this person? What other things could have gone on in their life that has led them to respond this way, and I just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, or I was the target today. And it's fantastic because when I'm driving, I'm big on like letting people in and thanking them, and I love when people thank me when I let them in. You should always do it without any desire for a return, but for me it means a lot when they thank me. If someone doesn't thank me...
Clearly you don't live in Los Angeles.
Clearly. Probably never will because of that comment. If they don't thank me or if they cut me off, I have a tendency to jump into, that was so rude, this person, and I stop myself and I say, no, something's going on. Maybe they were distracted. Maybe they have a kid in the back. Anyone with a screaming kid in the back knows that's challenging. Same applies when it comes to someone speeding on the streets. I used to think, how reckless. And look, for a big part of it, probably it is recklessness, but maybe that person is rushing to the hospital because their wife just gave birth. Or maybe there's some kind of emergency, they have to go help their mother who's had a fall. We don't know. And so by having that openness, that curiosity, not only about other people, but also even about ourselves, it changes your perspective on everything. It means you stop taking things personally. You stop internalizing things. It's not all about you. Other things are going on for other people. And even when the bad things happen, which they will, it allows you to recognize that, okay, this is not finite. This is not going to define my life. Yes, it happened. It will shape who I become, but I have a degree of choice. So can we unpack your journey and your experience with trust across these 4 attributes? Because these 4 attributes, so we have acceptance, we have agency, we have autonomy, we have adaptability. They converge, right? So you have a profile where some might be high, some might be low, a bit like a strengths finder or a disc. And then depending on what your profile is and what strengths you have, you often rely on those strengths, even if you're lower on something else. So there are certain archetypes, these profile archetypes. But let's have a look at what yours is. So when you experienced that horrible news about your mother, did you feel like life is unfair? Why me? What was your initial thought?
I didn't, it was despair. It was, why us?
Why us?
It was, it was just a general sensation of like, wow, this really sucks. Like, I can't believe it. It's like a perfect storm. Like, who else is this happening to? Like, I know a lot of people at this point in my life, like why, like, how could this have happened to us, a family that, like, you know, is really small, but like, you know, we're a competent family in many ways. We are a family that has access to healthy food and insight, and, you know, I mean, I was raised in a household that valued curiosity, I think. You know, I come from a very, in many ways, privileged family. So I was like, how is this happening to us? Yeah.
And then, I mean, it's devastating. It's absolutely devastating to have something like that happen. So you went through the initial fully natural response of, this doesn't make sense. This is unfair.
Exactly.
Why us? What then shifted? Because you then said there was some point where you decided to go into the, okay, how can I learn? How can I teach?
Yeah.
What happened at that point?
It was, I think it was an entitlement, a feeling of entitlement to answers. I didn't feel at any point that my non-academic training, that the fact that I wasn't a medical doctor was a barrier to me understanding all that I could about what she had, and, you know, if there was anything else out there that could be done to help her from a non-pharmacologic standpoint. You know, I'm a millennial, so I'm a child of the internet, and so I I immediately went to the best sources that I could find to try to find answers. And I've always been incredibly curious. I think that's part of what led to my success as a journalist. And really early on, I think, and especially in those moments of deep, dark despair, intuitively I would routinely take inventory of my skills and my abilities. I knew that I wasn't a medical doctor and that I wasn't a PhD in nutrition or anything like that. But I thought to myself, well, that doesn't mean that I can't be just as rigorous in my research. That doesn't mean that, in fact, at the time, this is like pre the ubiquity of social media. This is like pre-wellness world, like having access the way we do today with experts on social media. All that was really available to the inquisitive, scientific, amateur mind was like, maybe TED Talks and books. But I had read enough books at that point that I realized that like even medical doctors like aren't all that accurate or seemingly rigorous in terms of their research, because there's a lot of misinformation in nutrition books, diet books, wellness books, right? So I was like, maybe I could even be more rigorous in my research and even be more accurate and responsible than some of these MDs that I'm looking to for answers. So I felt this I guess profound sense of entitlement to seize the reins at that point of our destiny. I mean, obviously it didn't go as well as I would have hoped in terms of my mom's health, which, was out of my control. But in terms of the knowledge that I've acquired, I mean, I've learned more about nutrition and health than I ever thought I would in a lifetime.
Thank you so much for sharing this.
Yeah.
So if we then apply that journey to this framework, what I'm hearing is there's an extremely high degree of autonomy. What can I do right now? Instead of dwelling in the why me, initially you felt the why us, the why me, but then you shifted to, okay, well that is that, what now? What next? So you didn't dwell in the why, the poor me, it was the, okay, what can I do about this? So that demonstrates extremely high degree of autonomy. I'm also assuming you didn't spend a lot of time blaming or being resentful or complaining to a lot of people. You were more focused on action.
Yeah.
So that's, again, fantastic. That's an extremely high degree of autonomy, because when you lack autonomy, people will complain, because that's a way of regaining a sense of control over a situation they don't feel like they have control over.
Yeah.
They're fooling themselves. They blame other people or the system or doctors, which is really hard not to do when it's a situation like this. They become resentful. Why is that family healthy and mine not? And then they also get stuck in dwelling in past hurts. This is so unfair. This happened to me. I was hurt here. And they tell that story continually. So I don't hear any of that coming through your story. The next one is your agency. So you said that you didn't allow the fact that you didn't have the credential to dissuade you. In fact, it propelled you, because you noticed that, hey, just because I don't have this doesn't make me any less capable to do this and to research this.
And also, just because somebody has those credentials doesn't mean that they're
exactly.
Doesn't mean that they know what they're talking about
Completely.
Necessarily.
So that's an extremely high degree of agency. You set a goal, you know you can achieve it. You knew you had to learn, but you also trusted that you would be able to learn. So that's fantastic. The other thing that was really interesting is I didn't hear any lack of acceptance, which would be, what if I do this and it turns, I share something and it turns out to be wrong, and then someone pokes holes in it and then I feel like I failed. I didn't feel like that was part of your journey, and probably the reason why is you had such a strong drive to do this not for yourself, but for your mother, for your family, and not only that, it was for the benefit of everybody. And so when it comes to acceptance, I don't feel like you had issues with acceptance. One of the things that I talk about in the book for acceptance is there's this overarching gift that you can tap into, which allows you to basically forget yourself, and it's called self-forgetting. When you do anything for someone else, whether it is a family member, whether it is a community, when you want to be of value and of service, it shrinks that ego voice. Because acceptance is driven by, what will they think about me? How am I coming across? How am I perceived? Do they like me? Do they love me? It's very me, me, I, right? As soon as you go them, her, him, it shrinks that part of the voice. It has this shrinking self effect. And that's what I was hearing as you were sharing that. What I loved as well, you said that you had an inventory of your skills. So if anyone struggles with agency, which means, okay, you know what, I think it's worthwhile, let's quickly go through these, some of the attributes and what the most common themes are or habits that come through. So if we look at acceptance, if someone struggles with acceptance, they tend to fall into the likability trap. They prioritize being liked over anything else. They say yes when they mean no. They seek the validation of other people. They contort who they are to be more palatable to the people around them, because if the people around them approve of them, they can finally accept themselves. But then if someone doesn't approve of them, if someone says no to them, if someone doesn't like them, it becomes like a deep cut. And they feel this compulsive need to win back the approval. So that's the first one, the likability trap. We then have the second one, which is the shrinking syndrome, where people feel like they're afraid of visibility or afraid of success because deep down they don't believe that they deserve it. They also internalize failure. They internalize feedback. If someone's giving them constructive feedback, they don't see it as a growth opportunity. They see it as a sign that they're inadequate, and it cuts really deep. And then we also have the fourth one, which is called Schadenfreude. Schadenfreude is really common when people struggle with acceptance and self-esteem, and it's where you enjoy seeing other people fail. You enjoy seeing other people hurting because it gives you this sense of reprieve, this sense of, oh, thank goodness other people are suffering too. But it is terrible to get joy from other people's suffering. And if you ever feel that way, it's a sign that you need to really do that inward work. I mean, look, clickbaity headlines in a lot of the entertainment magazines are all about that. And we're driven to read them, and they feel this like guilty pleasure. It's generally a sign that you're struggling with acceptance.
Yeah.
So there are the four things, and I didn't hear any of that coming through because you were so focused on your mission.
Yeah.
If we look at agency, this is the one that could have been your greatest blocker. It was, I'm not qualified to do this. I'm not going to understand how to do this. People are going to pick me apart. I'm going to feel like an imposter. But again, I didn't hear that. And what you did was you kept an inventory of all the skills that you were developing. If anyone listening to this ever feels like an imposter, feels like you don't belong, what I encourage you to do, and one thing to acknowledge here is that a lot of women, in my experience, a lot of women will tend to wait to feel 100% ready, that they have all the skills, the qualifications before they apply for a job or before they try something. They want to have the certainty that it'll work out. And the reason is us women tend to judge failure and rejection as much more harshly, as much heavier than men would. So we have a part of our brain that is constantly scanning, and we're wired, a lot of us, for agreeableness. So something to acknowledge, but it does affect men too. So if you're applying for something or you feel like a fraud, do what we call, it's a 3-column exercise, super easy. Split a page up into 3. On the left, write down everything you don't think you know how to do. Everything that's missing. So in your case, it might be, well, I don't have a medical degree, I have no background in this, whatever it is. For someone else, it could be, I don't know how to code, I don't know how to give presentations. Write down everything you think you're missing. The middle column is where you write down your inventory of skills, but not only the hard skills, you want to write down all the, what we call essence qualities that you have. These are things like tenacity, growth mindset, curiosity, persistence, the ability to be really critical in your thinking. Capture all of them. Now, in your third column, you're then mapping those qualities and those skills from the middle column to the one on the right and saying, yes, I don't have a medical degree, but I have a growth mindset. I have tenacity. I have the ability to think critically about things, to question things. I can bring all of that to meet that check. Next one, coding. I don't know how to code, but I have learned hard things in the past. I'm a really fast learner. Again, you hone in on that. What that does is remind you that even if you've never done the thing that you're doing right now, you have the ability to do the thing that you're doing right now. You just have to give yourself grace to learn, to grow, and then acknowledge that even if it gets difficult, I can still persist. I can bring over all of these transferable skills. And this is great when it comes to, for example, people looking to transform their lives from a health perspective. One of the things about this framework, and I will get to the third and fourth pillars in a moment, but so we deal with people, or people come to us for help in their careers and in their lives. And then health is not something they directly come to us for, but we've identified that if someone lacks these 4 attributes, they're going to sabotage their health journey. because either they don't accept themselves, so they don't feel like they are worthy of changing their life from a health perspective, a health and wellness perspective. And that could come from a belief that they have early on. They might not believe that they can, because they're fixating on all the times that they couldn't in the past and saying, well, this is just who I am. Their self-image is locked in. Or they believe they have no control. Even if I change how I eat and go to the gym, nothing's going to change. Nothing's going to change. They're going into that victim mentality of powerlessness. Or there's that element around emotions. Now, how do emotions fit with our health and wellness journey? When we are feeling low, when we're feeling anxious, when we are insecure, it follows through to how we feel physically. It affects our energy. It affects whether we are going to put on those shoes and go to the gym, or whether we just feel like withdrawing, retreating, going in a Netflix binge, right? So all of these things are connected. And that's why it's so important when you acknowledge that big trust is really at the core of changing our self-image and changing our lives, not only at work, in our relationships, but even from a health perspective. So if we then jump across to this third pillar of autonomy, what do we see in autonomy? I shared this a little bit before. It's the blame, it's the complaining, it's the resentment, it's the dwelling on past hurts. And from a health perspective, you will see this as someone looking on social media, seeing someone with a six-pack and going, it's not fair, it's so easy for them. They don't have kids. Excuses, blame, resentment. Or I could never do what that person's doing. Nothing's going to change for me. Again, getting stuck in these patterns. So, and then of course, when we get to autonomy, a big part of this is acknowledging that our understanding of emotions, in my view, is completely wrong. We think that an emotion is just a response to a stimulus, and then we don't take steps to uncover why are we really feeling that way. I want to give you an example. So Max, let's say you have this beautiful cat. Have you ever shared the name of your cat?
Yes, of course, Delilah.
Okay, so Delilah. Yeah. I got to meet Delilah, and she's just delightful, so it's a perfect name. So let's say that you're on a work trip, and then you hear that Delilah is really sick, and she has to go to the vet. And you really want to get back from your work trip to be with Delilah, but you can't. And you feel guilty. You feel so guilty that you couldn't be back with your cat. So then you just carry the guilt and shame with you. And you allow that to make you feel like less of a cat owner, cat dad, whatever, and then it starts attacking you and you start noticing other areas where actually I fell short here and I wasn't able to be there for that. And then you've just created this loop, this meta emotion loop. Whereas if you unpack it and go, okay, well, why do I feel this guilt and shame? It's because I love my cat. I want to be there for my cat. So what this is showing me actually is that my priority is to be there for my cat. And the fact that I wasn't able to do it in this moment is highlighting that maybe I want to change. I mean, it's different with a cat. Like, let's say it was a child, which Delilah might be your child.
Yeah.
But we see this a lot with our clients. So it's a child and you miss their dance recital because your work trip got extended and you feel so guilty and full of shame. Instead of telling yourself, I'm a bad parent, I'm such a bad parent, because you'll start to notice other ways that you've fallen short. You say, well, this is telling me that I really prioritize kids. I want to be there for my kids. That means I'm not going to take as many work trips. While they're young, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to make a decision to change something, to change how I'm feeling about the things I'm missing out on. So see how you've just uncovered and unlocked the underlying meaning of an emotion rather than just experiencing it and allowing it to attack you. Here's another example. Let's say that you are at work or at the gym and you see someone else getting mistreated. Maybe someone's treating them with, there's prejudice or something. And you get really angry, extremely angry. That anger could be telling you that you really value justice. And then how you channel that anger is, okay, I'm going to do something about this. I'm going to go and talk to that person. I'm going to go and seek justice here. So emotions are usually reflecting unexpressed values. And where a value has been violated. Okay, I want to touch on values here because I think, again, there's this misconception. We often say, what are your top 3 values? I don't think it works like this. I think we have hundreds of values. And someone might say, oh, but there's only 47 in such and such scale. I think there's a lot more. We're so complex and we experience things differently. And so that idea of like your top 3, your top 5, I kind of disagree with that. Even though sometimes in our programs we will get people to go through the exercise. We have a lot, right? And so if you have an emotion that you're experiencing, like, okay, I'm talking and someone cuts me off and I feel really aggravated by that, like that was very rude and I feel insignificant, What is the value that is being violated right there? Well, for me, it's that I believe everyone should get a fair go. Everyone should be respected. So respect and fair go, they're the values that are being violated. That's why I feel so strongly. It's not self-doubt. It's not insecurity. It's just that a value was violated. When you see it that way, it's a little bit more objective, and then you can take steps to address it. You can speak to the person, hey, when you cut me off, I felt like my voice didn't matter, and I'd love to be part of a team or a community where people respect each other and where everyone's voice is valued. What can we do to get there? See how it's not, I felt insecure and I didn't like it and you need to change? It gives you an avenue to address something and to take an action. And so when we're talking about adaptability, a big part of that is recognizing the role that emotions are playing and how we can start to see them as data, unpack the real reason that they're there, and acknowledge they're not just all a reflection of insecurity and worry and fear and I'm not enough. There's something that it's telling us, and we can choose what we do with that information.
So true. You know, when people routinely cut you off, like I would often get really irked by that, but I have two close friends who have a tendency to like cut me off mid-sentence and like, you know, interject. And I learned relatively recently, I forget where I learned it, but that for many people, that's actually a sign of anxiety.
When they cut you off?
People who are prone to like interjecting, they have like anxiety, and that's why they do it. So instead of getting like irked about that now, I'm like, I connected the dots and I'm like, actually that person is a really anxious person. They're cutting me off because they just can't wait their turn to speak. It's like it's an anxiety thing. It's like an anxiety tick. It's not necessarily that they don't value, I mean, maybe for some people it is that they don't value what you're saying, you know. It's probably different on a case-by-case basis. But if that person also seems like anxious and neurotic, it's very possible that that tendency, that behavior is like an anxious tick. It's not a sign of them like, you know, undervaluing what you're saying.
Which then brings us back to that wasiati concept, right? Curiosity. Like what you see is not all there is. What else could be going on for this person? They could be feeling intense social anxiety. They might have an overthinking brain. A lot of the time we talk about neurodivergence as well. A lot of people who are neurodivergent cut others off without intending to, but it's because they have so much energy and excitement and they want to get in there and so we've got to acknowledge what you see is not all there is.
Exactly.
Thanks, Dan Kahneman.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's like I used to get like really, you know, PO'd when people especially friends, when they would cut me off, and now I don't. I have like way more grace. I'm like that person that's just like an anxious tick. Similarly, when you're dealing with trolls sometimes on social media, I've noticed that many, like oftentimes they are like, and this is no judgment, but it's like, you know, there's a lot of like, especially in the world of academia, there's a lot of autism, there's a lot of neurodivergence. And sometimes the haters that you're getting on social media, they're not on the same like playing field as you. It's not better or worse, but it's like you don't know that when you're interacting with these people. And
on the topic of, let's talk a little bit about haters or dissenters or people who don't like us. So we've got, of course, the world of social media. So I'm a massive people pleaser. I'm recovering from that. Nothing was worse. You know what? I'll do that again so that we're not interrupted by the... Or maybe we leave it in.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's authentic.
It's talking to us.
Yeah, it is.
It is.
It's the power of your words.
Exactly. So much trust happening here. So massive people pleaser here. And when I started going on social media, we really exploded around 2021. Was it 21? Yeah, 2021. TikTok was taking off. We grew from basically 0 to 200,000 people. Actually, this was 2020. 0 to 225,000 in 6 weeks. It was prime time for us. So suddenly, this recovering people pleaser is exposed to millions of people and hundreds and thousands of comments coming in from everywhere. And on the whole, comments are positive. You get 5 to 10% of people who just hate you,
of course,
passionately, and hate everything about you. Your voice, your pronunciation, your eyebrows, the fact that I've discovered half my face is like more animated than the other. It's like a little laggy. And I didn't know that until someone made me aware of it. I can't do anything about that.
Thanks, haters.
Thank you. Thank you for making me aware.
You got to love your haters. I mean, imagine living rent-free in somebody's head.
Totally.
You know?
Totally.
There's that meme on social media, like, imagine hating me and I'm just here with like Delilah on my chest licking my face, you know?
I know.
Like crazy.
Keep it coming. Well, that's the thing, right? So again, what you see is all there is. We see that moment, or rather that person has seen us pop up and it has triggered something so deeply in them that they feel compelled to leave hate. So you just have to think, okay, in that moment, What we see is, or what they saw was something that popped up and they made all these assumptions. What we saw was their response to that, which is a mean comment. But there's probably so much else going on for that person. For anyone to feel compelled to be hateful in real life, it generally reflects a lot of insecurity, a lot of self-hatred, Schadenfreude, which is wanting to point out other people's flaws and seeing them fail. So having compassion is one of the best approaches. It's really hard to do in practice because when we receive some kind of a criticism, the reason why it can hurt so much is because deep down, we already believe that about ourselves. So if I were to say to you, Max, your third arm is disgusting. That arm sticking out right there is disgusting. How do you feel about that?
I don't feel anything.
No, because you don't have a third arm.
Yeah.
It's not the way that you are. Yet when it comes to comments or criticism or negative feedback that we internalize, we only internalize it when we deep down believe that about us. And usually it reflects one of these 4 perceptions, a lack or a weakness in one of these 4 attributes. So that's really important to be aware of. And what can be helpful in those moments is, firstly, remind yourself, I don't have to accept everything that's coming my way, right? The other thing you can do, especially if you're on social media, is you have the choice to engage with the person. Sometimes it's worth your energy to kind of go back and forth and turn them around, and then they become the most lovely people ever. Sometimes you can just block them, because if they are having such a negative response to you now, the best thing you can do is prevent you from popping up in their feed again.
Exactly.
So it's actually a service to them and to you because they're not in your feed. But let's say it's happening elsewhere in life, someone's attacking you. Something that's really valuable to do before you go into these situations, before you post on social media, is something that I do. I've had to, every time I post something, I will have these thoughts in my head. What will people think? Will this perform well? What are people going to say? Worst process to go through. So I say to myself, literally, I'll say, Shadé, care less. Care less. Care less about what people think. Care less about how it's received. Care less about the likes or the comments. Make it about something else, right? Just care less. So I was getting into that habit of care less, and it was working. I would just hijack that part of my brain, because what we find is when we're going through the what will they think, what about this, what about that, we're not demonstrating an internal locus of control. It's an external locus. We cannot control what those people think. And when they've done scans of people's brains, when people are in an external locus, which is what overthinking is driven by, things outside of our control, there's less activation in the prefrontal regions. In the ventromedial prefrontal cortex, more activation in the emotion centers, the threat detection centers of the brain. It's happening on autopilot, default. And so in those moments, if you can literally just say, okay, care less, I'm going to focus on what I can control. You re-engage those prefrontal regions, which are responsible for logic and rationality, and you see a decrease in activity in the emotive centers, simply by focusing your attention. It is so remarkably powerful. Attention is, I think, our greatest superpower, right? You just shift your attention. So I started doing that, and it was working great. And then my husband said, okay, it's great that you've got the care less, but what are you countering that with? What are you caring more about? And I thought, oh yeah, I'm missing the other side here. I need to remind myself to care more about impact, helping just one person, being of value, being of service. And so now I go through the process, care less about what they think, care more about being of value. And it's incredibly powerful because it reminds me of what I'm doing, stops that external locus thinking, the overthinking, the what ifs, the catastrophizing. If you're in a position where you feel like you're overthinking, you might be judged, you might be criticized, I encourage everyone who is watching or listening, grab a piece of paper, split it in two. On the left, write care less. On the right, you want to write down care more. And then you literally list the things. Remind yourself of that. It's such a simple practice, but it's almost a form of also reframing what is happening to focus on really what matters.
So true. Yeah, I mean, sometimes attention can feel out of your control, what with the algorithms of social media and just like, I mean, they've got very high paid people in Silicon Valley working round the clock to figure out ways to keep you, to keep you on their platforms. And yeah, so it's really, I think, super wise advice to recognize that, what you attune to, you could also tune out to.
Well said. Well said. And it's so easy when you're stuck in that doom scroll, that binge scroll, whatever it is you're watching. Most of my feed is animals, because I love animals and I've curated a feed which is all just animals.
Love that.
But I get stuck in, and also the other thing is you tend to spend more time on things that trigger an intense emotion. So for me, a lot of it is animals in a shelter on the euthanasia list, or like animals that are mistreated, that are rescued. And so I'm watching these things, crying my eyes out, feeling these intense emotions. And then I just keep going. I heard recently that this idea of the swiping, people would say, oh, it's a dopamine hit every time you swipe. But actually, and I think this is more accurate, what is happening is that it's the anticipation of maybe the next video will give me the feeling that I seek. And so the swipe itself is the dopamine hit because it's anticipating that you're going to get to the goal, which is that one video which will make you go, I'm good now, I can close it, but it never comes. And so you watch the next video and you're like, no, that didn't really give me what I thought. Okay, next one. And so you get stuck in these loops. And I think that's so powerful because it's, again, tapping into that drive that we have for something that's going to make us feel fulfilled or whole. And then we never get there. And it does feel like it's out of your control. Sometimes I pull out my phone to post content. We don't have a team that does that for us. We do it all ourselves because for us, there's an element of, we like the authenticity of like being there, writing the thing and posting. So I'll pull out my phone to post content. 30 minutes later, I'm swiping. I'm stuck in a doom scroll and I'm asking myself, why did I come on here? That's right, to post content. So then I go in and post the content. It just grabs us. But I like to think of it this way. Yes, it feels like we have no control over it. But that is a choice. We know it does this, and yet we still pick up the phone and we still get stuck. So my choice going forward is going to be, I'm going to set times to create content. I'm going to set an alarm because I know that the content can be posted in 3 minutes. I write it elsewhere, I just get on it. So I'm going to start the alarm when I get on there, focus on the content, finish the 3 minutes, close the device. That is the choice that I make beforehand to elevate my autonomy so I don't get stuck in this loop. And then I can do what I need to do. If I pick up the phone to post without doing the prep work, I'm probably going to get stuck in a loop and think, oh, it's out of my control.
All those cute little animals.
Oh gosh, the cute little animals and the euthanasia lists and the saving them, and it's too much.
It's better than mine. It's all shirtless jack dudes.
Oh well, whatever floats your boat.
It's not gay. It's my fitness content, and stuff like that. Daniel Craig, a lot of that. Also some cute cats, senior cats.
Oh,
I have a soft spot for senior cats. Yeah. I feel like one day it's in the cards maybe to like have a cat sanctuary. I feel like that would be.
I love that. I've always dreamed about having an animal sanctuary.
Yeah,
one day.
It sounds
so nice,
together. Right? Yeah, I'm down.
Yeah,
I'm like, I say to myself, I texted my brother the other day. I was like, I would like to actually like fund something like that. That seems like it would be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Well, this was so fun.
This was a lot of fun.
So fun, and I feel like I got like a free therapy session. So
I'm so happy.
Yeah.
But you know what? There's one element we didn't cover because I got so excited. I do want to quickly cover the element of, because we talked about how to feel more confident, which actually is not about the feeling of confidence. It's about the trusting yourself. But then what happens if you do trust yourself, but you're not exhibiting the right kind of behaviors or physicality to get other people to trust you or other people to have confidence in you? Because when you look confident, it increases your perceptions of competence. And we have worked with some people who are really good at what they do. They trust themselves, but there's a ceiling because other people don't see the confidence and it doesn't translate to competence. This can happen certain cultural groups who just haven't learned how to exude confidence. It can happen with particular genders who, mainly women, who have for a very long time just taken up less space and spoken more quietly. They trust themselves, but they don't know how to convey it. So I'll just share a few simple strategies for anyone listening before we wrap up. So the very first thing to acknowledge is that the brain and body are deeply and intricately connected. And what you're doing physically will both reflect and reinforce what's going on in your head. So if you are ever doubting yourself, feeling insecure, unsure, your body, because of what your brain is telling it, which is usually magnifying the negative, will try to withdraw to protect itself. You will lean out, you'll slouch, you'll look down, you'll shrink. That then reinforces to your brain, yes, you need to protect yourself. Keep doing that. And then it keeps magnifying the negatives.
It's like a vicious cycle.
Completely. And so what you want to do in those moments is use what we call the opposite action strategy. Super simple, comes from dialectical behavior therapy. You simply go, okay, well, there is no physical threat right now. Different story if there's a tiger here or there's no physical threat. I'm going to do the opposite of what my body's telling me to do. I'm going to sit up. I'm going to lift my gaze, shoulders down and back, arms outstretched, as opposed to the kind of shrinking that we do. And I'm going to take some deep breaths. What that does is hijack that automatic process that is trying to get you to withdraw and instead reminds you, hey, I'm safe, I'm here, I'm leaning in. That's a really, really quick way to shift how you're feeling, because again, you're reminding your thoughts and your brain, hey, I can think these things, but actually I'm taking ownership, I'm shifting my attention. The other thing which also links to that is, instead of what if this fails, what if this succeeds? What if I do make a great connection here? What if it goes well? You just counter it with that. Now, the other thing is, when you are meeting someone new, and it could be anywhere, it could be at the gym, it could be at work, it could be business environment, the very first thing they're going to notice. Okay, let's role play this. So Max, I'm on the other side of a room. You've just come to a networking event. What's the first thing you notice about me? Like, we're 20 meters away.
Well-dressed, attractive. 20 meters away, that's what I'm going to notice.
Yeah, exactly. So it's really, and mainly it's dress, because you may not even be able to make out someone's face yet. So it's just physical appearance, right? In terms of what we're wearing. So I always say, don't wear anything. Okay, this obviously is contextual. So it entirely depends on whether you're trying to elevate credibility in this situation. If you are, you want to dress in a way that doesn't make you stand out for the wrong reasons. You don't want to distract someone from your value by wearing something that is distracting. That differs depending on where you are in your journey, but if you're just starting out, you actually want to wear something that is going to be a sense of belonging. You're going to look like you belong to the group, as opposed to, who the heck is that? Who invited that? Who let that person in? Right? You can have a little pop of color or a little something else for personality, but you don't want to alienate yourself too early when you're trying to be part of a group. So that's the first thing. Now, as you advance in your career or your whatever, and you gain the credibility, you can do whatever you need, because your credibility is not in question anymore. This is when you're starting, you're meeting new people, etc. So that's the first thing, what you're wearing. The second thing is posture. You'll probably be able to tell if I'm hunching, looking down, versus if I'm upright, I have open gestures and I'm making eye contact, right? From a distance. Generally, posture reflects internal levels of self-belief, which then manifests in our perceptions of competence. If you have two people, one of them is slouching, the other one is not, you're going to think, okay, I'm going to give that person the job, I'm going to give that person my business, I trust them more because of the competence factor. Then as you get closer, you're going to notice things like my face, my eye contact. Am I making eye contact, or am I darting around? Am I staring too much for too long? Because that's also creepy, so don't do that either. They generally say around 3 seconds of uninterrupted eye contact, which means that's just enough time to determine what is the color of this person's iris. So just, what is the color of their iris? Cool. And then you might look away for a moment. You might take a breath, blink, whatever it is. And then smile. A lot of the time we think that in order to be credible, we need to have a really stern looking face. For people to believe that we are who we say we are.
That we're serious.
Serious people. Yeah. That can actually do the opposite. Smiling is a signal of warmth. It's a signal of approachability. And if you are too serious, it might lead people to not trust you. There's a level of mistrust. I'm not sure about this person. Now, I'm not saying like crazy maniac clown smile. I'm talking about genuine, natural, approachable smile. Someone who is saying, hey, come and talk to me. I'm open. So that's the next thing. Then, so we've got physicality, we've got face. The other thing is going to be open palms. So if you have your hands in your pocket, it's going to lead people to question your motives, etc. Having an open palm is just a really good rule of thumb. Then we move to how you speak. A lot of the time, even if someone trusts themselves, and this happens to me before I step on any stage, we get nervous. We get nervous because our body is priming us for all the things that could go wrong. We've got the adrenaline, the cortisol. A really simple technique that I use is to tell myself, I feel this way because I care. I feel this way because I care about the outcome. I want to deliver a good presentation. I want people to feel that I was of impact and of value. You do that again, you're shifting your attention to change your interpretation of what you feel. Something else is fascinating. There was a study that was published a number of years back where the psychologist Alison Wood Brooks, she brought people together and put them in anxiety-inducing situations, like public speaking with no preparation, a maths exam, and singing in front of an audience? Which of those would you find most anxiety inducing?
Well, for me, I don't know. I'd be pretty comfortable.
You're an anomaly, Max.
Yeah.
Too much big trust.
Maybe at this point, like right now, today, probably singing in front of an audience.
Okay, amazing. So you're in the group of the singing in front of the audience.
I've had a few weeks of practice, man. I'd feel less anxious about it. But,
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
Good. Okay, so you're in that group. Now, they split your group into two, and everyone's feeling anxious, okay? Your group gets told, say out loud, I'm excited. Instead of, oh my gosh, I'm so anxious, just, I'm excited. The other group is not given that instruction. You then go in and you do these things and then you come back. The group that said, I'm excited, ended up feeling less anxiety and performing better.
Interesting.
That is the power of relabeling an emotion. We often just take an emotion as a given because what's happening is we feel something physiologically, right? So you would feel your heart. What would you feel if you were anxious?
Yeah. Racing heart rate.
Yeah.
I'd feel jittery, like
Jittery?
nervous. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe a little tense. Yeah, maybe increasing heat,
Yeah.
body heat.
Mm-hmm.
So these are physiological sensations. Then your brain will interpret that because you might have just had 4 shots of coffee immediately before it, in which case your brain would go, oh, this is probably from the coffee. But if you're in a situation where you're about to go and sing to an audience, your brain is going to interpret the physiology of what you're feeling. Again, so much trust.
So much trust.
The physiology of what you're feeling and go, oh, there is such a big risk here of you going out there singing, making a fool of yourself, getting rejected, people will criticize you, magnifying these things. And so you identify fear. This is fear, this is anxiety. And it's why that similar feeling could be what you get when you're waiting for your favorite band to come on stage. The anticipation, the heat, the tensity, the heart rate, the jittery. In that environment, it's exciting. But the same physiology in a different situation where there's social judgment is considered fear.
But you have the power to rewrite the story that you're telling yourself.
Which is fascinating, right? Simply by changing what you're saying. So that's the next level. It's making sure that whatever you're feeling, you're interpreting it in a way that's going to help you. When we see stress as helpful or what's called stress as enhancing, research shows that we perform better. We have less of a negative response to stress because stress is helpful when it's at the right levels.
It's also like it speaks to the power of words. You know, it's like sometimes we'll resent going to the gym. You know, we'll say, "Oh, I've got to work out today." But if you just flip it and say to yourself, "I get to work out today," it makes it a lot more exciting and like, you know, something that you're actually like grateful to get to do.
Yeah, and this is actually called empowered language in the literature. They found that when you use language of have to, can't, or what's the other one? Should, it leads you to feel less motivated and more susceptible to temptation. Whereas if you shift it to want to, get to, or choose to, you feel a greater sense of motivation and you're able to resist temptation more. And what I love about especially choose to, you're reminding yourself it is a choice, which elevates your autonomy. Now, the flip side of that is, let's say that you are having a really off day and you really just need to stay in bed. Rather than saying, I have to stay in bed, you'd say, I'm choosing to rest today because my body needs it. Again, you make a choice to do that rather than feeling like, oh, my body's not allowing me to, why me? That's the power of choice. The next level, so you've just seen me across the room, you've come up to me, you've seen what I'm wearing, my posture, my face, my eyes, my smile. It's going to be how I speak. So when we're nervous, when we're a little anxious, we tend to speak a little bit higher. We speak from our the throat area rather than our diaphragm. See the difference between this and then this? That is the difference of how it sounds, whether we're really nervous and excited and kind of not really sure how to manage it, and then we get a bit frantic and we don't have pauses, and then the person can't keep up, and then I don't really sound like I have a lot of competence in myself. Where, I can hear Delilah, how sweet.
She wants in.
Oh, let her in. Whereas if you slow it down a little, hi, I'm Shadé Zahrai, really excited to be here. Tell me about what you do. You maintain a steady pace. You maintain those pauses. Importantly, you maintain engagement when you're speaking. These little things are subtle cues that, again, can elevate how you're perceived. Now, one other thing which is not talked about often enough, how fast you walk. If you want a simple micro boost to increase how you're perceived, studies looking at biological motion have found that if you walk with purpose, meaning a little bit faster than a kind of a waddle, with a little bit more, pep in your step. Intention, yes, good word, intention. You're perceived as having higher status than if you just shuffle your feet and move really slowly. And I think that's so important for us to be aware of because it's simple. It's really simple. Know where you're going. And then this is also important for women to be aware of because when we dress up, when we are at work, when we're in professional environments, we sometimes wear things that are a little restrictive that prevent us from walking quicker. And also we wear shoes, sometimes they're very high heels, that prevent us from walking quicker. So we just need to be aware that these could be giving certain perceptions and preventing us from doing certain or engaging in certain behaviors that would actually help the perceptions of how we're seen by others. So just a few things to think about. One other element when it comes to speaking, the classics that we want to avoid is I think that's a good idea. I think this might be the right approach. I think avoid that. Just say my recommendation is based on the information we have. Here's what I propose. The other one is over apologizing. Sorry if I'm saying too much. Sorry if this is a silly idea. We do this all the time to try and soften a message, or if we don't really believe in ourselves, it undermines your words before you've said anything. Just say the thing. The other one is just. I'm just checking in. I'd just like to say, I just think we should skip it. I'm checking in. I'd like to say. Really simple things that we can implement. And they change how we feel, but also how other people respond to us. Because we are also a mirror to how others respond. So if someone responds positively, we are more likely to feel positive about ourselves. If someone questions our abilities, we're more likely to question our abilities. So if you can show up and start implementing these simple perceptions of confidence, it again changes how people are responding to you, which changes how you're feeling, which changes what you say and what you do, and you create this beautiful positive upward spiral.
Wow, very tactical. There's one other thing that I would probably notice if I was standing 20 feet away from you on the other side of the room.
Hair?
Well, no, if you were, lovely hair. If other people seem to be engaged and entertained by you, because that's a form of social proof.
I love that, yes.
Like if you were like entertaining like a bunch of like people, I would be like, who's that girl? Like what's so interesting
I want to go talk to her.
Yeah.
So I love this. There's something that I like to talk about, and I'm sure there's research on it, and people have probably written books on it, but this is what I've observed. When we talk about presence, or this term charisma, which is really interesting because the research doesn't really have a clear view on how to define charisma, but we'll use it because I think Riz, we know what it means intuitively. So when we look at charisma, I think there are two types. One of them is what we call captivating charisma. So it's that person in the room who is just so engaging when they're telling their story and everyone is listening to their every word. It's that person on stage who captivates you from the moment they start speaking. You are in awe at what they're doing. That's captivating charisma. Then we have the other type. Now, I'll share what it is in a moment. Have you ever heard someone speak and they're amazing on stage and then they walk off stage and you actually don't have any desire to go and speak to them?
Yeah, probably, yeah.
Yeah? Or there's someone at a party and you're listening to their story and it's so captivating, but then the story ends and everyone kind of just moves away.
Peters out, yeah.
Yeah. It's because those people lack what I call magnetic charisma. So on the one hand, captivating charisma is the come and watch me, I'm so engaging. Magnetic charisma is come and talk to me because there's something about me that you find really intriguing. And usually magnetic charisma reflects the human element, the values, the qualities that you really resonate with. So if someone is speaking and you're like, wow, I love what you're speaking about, it reflects values that I have, you're going to want to go and connect afterwards. But if someone is speaking and you're like, that's cool, that's funny, but there's something not quite right here, I don't really have a desire to keep going. So this is what I love as well, because I feel like big trust, even though it's not related to values, it allows you to exude something that becomes very magnetic. Because it's not loud, it's not bravado, it's not arrogance. It's just that deep knowing that things will be okay because I will be okay because I have what it takes and I'm worthy and I can do this. And that tends to attract people and also give them permission to do the same.
Amen. So well said. Amen. Well, this was so fun.
This was really fun.
Thanks again for coming
Thanks,
out.
Max. Thanks for having me. I wish Delilah was actually here.
I know. We got to figure out like how to build a little cat door.
We'll get a catio in here.
A catio. I mean, that's actually not a bad idea. I thought about like putting like a little bed, something like that. I don't know, maybe in the future.
Oh, you should.
One last question for you before we get to that. Where can people pick up your new book, and how can they find you on social media and all the channels?
So the book is out. You can go and get it from any bookstore, anywhere that sells books. And what's really cool about it is, we talked about these 4 attributes. There is a quiz, a 12-question quiz, which is based on a psychometrically validated tool. And it helps you determine where are you on each of these 4 attributes. So you can figure out what your doubt profile is, and then you have your roadmap within it. The exercises, the proven techniques, the strategies to build your baseline. We have some people say, oh, but I'm fine. I've got big trust. The good news is you can always strengthen it. And you can also use yours to then help other people develop theirs.
Wow, it's a beautiful book too.
Thank you. Yeah, if you resonated with it, I encourage you to pick up a copy. If you struggle with insecurity, imposter syndrome, self-doubt, fear of failure, doubting yourself, hesitating, feeling like a victim, this is a guidebook to take you through what you need, because the fact is there's so much information in the world. So we've distilled it to what you need to help you move forward.
Love it. Support our girl.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah, the typesetting of the book is like beautiful. I don't know what it's like, the font or something. It's like just like really well designed. Yeah, it's great.
I'll tell the team.
Yeah. Well, the last question that gets asked to everybody on the show: what does living a genius life mean to you?
Living a genius life to me is the ability. Okay, it's a little bit of a longish answer. It's not like a one-word response. To me, living a genius life is being able to perform at your peak. But I define peak performance different to most of the world. Most of the world define peak performance as the elite athlete, being the best at, being in the top. I don't define it that way at all. To me, peak performance is showing up in your peak state, no matter where you are. That means showing up as a peak parent to your kids, showing up as a peak human when your barista gets your coffee order wrong, showing up as a peak passenger to your Uber driver, being the best of yourself in every single environment. And in order to do that, in order to live that genius life, and it's also health related, right? Being your peak in your peak health state. In order to do that, I believe you need to have big trust. Because if you don't have big trust, it reflects in your self-image. And your self-image is that thing that you continually reinforce through every experience that you have. And if you don't update that blueprint, that internal blueprint of your self-image by developing those 4 qualities, you will always be held back. You will always sabotage.
Well said. Beautifully put.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming out.
Thanks for having me, Max.
Shadé, you're the best.
Thanks.
Thank you guys for listening. Share this episode with friends and loved ones who may benefit from it. And I will catch you on the next episode. Peace, everybody. Hey, if you liked that video, you need to check out this one here, and I'll see you there.